and minimize that so no one else sees it. Okay, today we're going to go over the e-contracting process. I'm going to walk you through the basic e-contracting process itself, but then at the back half of the call, we're going to go through a kind of a simplistic document review scenario. One of the biggest setup items we have are if distributors do have specific documents they need to convert over to e-contracting, there is usually a conversation involved in order to help understand exactly what their needs are and how we can set the form up to best serve those needs. So first we'll just take a quick recap of the contracting. All our items here under the e-contract section, we have 4 selections you'll be dealing with. The admin upload, that's for uploading documents if you want to store certain documents on our server. Documents could be, in some cases, photo or photo identification, or sometimes some distributors collect car information as far as registration and insurance. You can also upload other documents if you have an ad hoc direct deposit form or maybe an ad hoc one-day contract for a special program. Again, that can be uploaded. We'll show you that process. The manager's page, which is the main page where you're actually going to be creating the documents. We have what's called a due to renew page, which is actually just a basic search feature so that if the distributor is going to do contract renewals, we have that page set up so that in most cases, most distributors do a yearly renewal. If they do renewals at all, it's to them based on their criteria. We have that as kind of a search feature so that you can put in a date, and based on that date, it will let you know who is upcoming for a renewal based on when they signed. And our document search feature, which again is it's helpful for actually when you go to do contracts. If you have a large amount to do, it helps you track them, and also there are some other features on that that come in handy for the regular process of actually getting a DSP to sign. But to start out, we're actually going to go to the manager's page first. Now, when you come to the manager's page, the whole process is 4 steps. The first process is you need to search for the DSP. Now, we have 2 radar buttons here. One is for contract renewal, which says renew existing DSP. The other is for new route for existing DSP. Now, in most cases, for a normal contracting event, you're for contracting someone brand new to a route, or if someone's taking an extra route, you're going to be doing the new route for existing DSP. So the first thing we actually want to do is actually want to search the system to see if we actually already have that DSP in our system. So for instance, if I search by my first name, Jim, and last name, Bakanowski, if I just walk through the door, we'd want to do a search. And you can see there's no results. So what that tells me is I'm currently not in that distributor's system in order for us to do a contract. So since I'm not existing already, the next step for them to do would be to actually add me brand new. So you click on that add button. And when we click on the add button, what happens is it actually opens up the page. I'll widen this a little bit. This is your administration DSP add page. I would fill in the appropriate information here to actually add this DSP to the system. So let's say I choose a number, BAKANJ 23, and I would type in my pertinent information here, of course. And we'll just put in some addresses here real quick. Zip code, and obviously all fake information here. For the sake of security, not that I don't mind you guys visiting me, but I don't want you to know where I live. So, and of course, you would choose the start date. In most cases, the start date would be today. And once I get all this information in, we would click on the Save button. Now, I have the option of either going to the Maintain section or staying on this page, but for the sake of doing a contracting, once I have them added, I can actually close this page out. Now, if I go back and do a search, we actually will find that I am actually there. So that's always the process that someone should use, is actually to search the system first to see if the DSP is already in the system. And sometimes you may know it, sometimes you may not. Depends on how long you've been using the system. If you have someone who tries a route today and doesn't do very well, but then a year or 2 from now comes back, again, you may actually have that person in your system already. So we always recommend that you search first before you actually add. And this actually avoids putting a person in your payroll system with more than, having them in there more than one time with a separate payroll ID number. Now, once you do a search and find the person you actually want to contract, then it's just a simple matter. We go over to step 2, and we're going to select them. Now, if for some reason I did a search, there happened to be more than one Jim Bakanowski. Again, it could be John Smith maybe you're searching for, and maybe there's more than one John Smith. you would see those results listed here, and you just simply have to click on the select link on which line item of the person you want to actually contract. So in this case, it's obvious there's only one line item, so I click on the select. Now, when you click on the select button, a window kind of pops up here. We have what we call our document grid. It actually shows you the document types that are available and has a couple columns, whether or not they're signed or not signed, whether they're assigned to attached to a specific route. Some documents are route specific, some are DSP specific. For example, a W-9 form doesn't really need a route number. That's more or less a DSP specific item. So you really won't ever see a route number there. You'll just see the fact that it's a W-9 and that the DSP will have to sign it. Something like the contract in Schedule A, they usually are more route specific, meaning that we have a specific geography area that's designated by the route number. The rates on the route are designated, again, by the route number, so everything ties in there. So you may see the route column filled in or not filled in. We have whether the manager signed the document or not, and again, that's if they need to. Again, something like a W-9, you see where it says NA. A manager would not sign a W-9. That's specific to the DSP. If, again, there was a sign, you'd see the manager's sign date and whether or not the DSP signed and the date they actually signed it. So right now, since I'm obviously brand new, there's no documents for me, and that's fine. That's what we're going to do in the next step. We're actually going to create them. Now, basically after step 2, you also have some information down here as far as when we did our select. You can see there's some data down here as far as, again, name, address. Again, just kind of make sure you have the right person. It's also in the green text above each section just to make sure you are working on the person you want to work on and do the contract. So first thing you want to do is when you go to step 3, basically you want to start at the top, work your way down, fill in the appropriate fields. You need to select the plant number. Now again, in this case, in this demo plant, we only have one plant. If a distributor has more than one plant, they would have multiple plants listed there. They would choose the plant they want to contract the DSP in. The contract start date. Now, we can go back 3 days in the past in order to do a contract. That's not recommended, obviously. In most cases, we want to contract someone before they actually go out on a route. This way, they have a signed legal document that says they actually are an independent contractor. If they don't sign that, then by law, they may be construed as actually an employee. So you do want to always make sure that someone signs promptly, but the system does allow you to go back 3 days in time if needed. You can also future date a contract, meaning that if it's today and I happen to have someone walk in today and say, look, I want to do a route, but I can't start till Monday, I can make a decision, okay, well, let's get all the paperwork out of the way today. We'll get you signed up with the start date of Monday. And this way, when we come in on Monday, we just have to show you, the warehouse routine. So you can certainly future date someone. In this case, I'm actually just going to leave the day as today. Assuming the person just walked in, I'm going to sign them on the route today. Now, the contract end date, it's grayed out. That's always going to be 12/31/99. That's just a technical type computer program thing where when you contract someone, basically we're going to have them in the system from the programming standpoint. We're going to have them on the system pretty much forever. Now, obviously, if there are renewals involved, the renewal will happen and it will actually change the contract start date or the renewal date. But we do need that date in the contract end date to say that far out in the future to make sure that the DSP, as long as they're doing a route, actually stays in there and always processes. So you actually won't be able to change that. There is another process you would use to actually unassign a carrier, which is under the admin tools, once the carrier decides to leave. If you want to type in the date of birth, you can see we have our standard month, day, and four digits for the year. Type in birthday. Gender, again, we have male, female. Again, choose the appropriate one. Languages, now we do, all our documents are standardly in English. We do offer other languages. From the PCF world, we have Spanish and Portuguese documents. The default language is English. We always load our documents in English. If a distributor wants to have another language, as far as Spanish or Portuguese, they would actually have to provide us their document already translated. We actually don't do the translation ourselves. Normally what we tell the distributors, if they do want that, there are many online services where if you provide them with the Microsoft Word document of your contract, it can be anywhere from like $50 to $100 to translate a document into another language. But we do have that capability where we can load a Spanish document or Portuguese so that when you choose that particular language, the appropriate language will come up, and this way the contractor will be able to read the document in a language they're comfortable with. In this case, we only have English loaded in this plant, so we will choose English. Now, we do have a radio button here, whether or not the DSP is going to use their social security number or if they have an EIN tax ID number, meaning they're putting it under some sort of company business. So maybe they have a small business, they're going to be putting it under that. In this case, we're just going to use a basic social security number. 99-0052, let's use. Okay. Now, because I chose the social security number, the tax ID field is grayed out. The email address, we do recommend that you try to capture the email address as all possible. I'm going to type in my work email address to show you the process. It's helpful for when the DSP goes to sign. It's not a required field, but it does make the signing process a little bit more secure. And also, in the eyes of the electronic signature, it also helps establish that this was the DSP who actually signed the document, which you'll see why in a second. Ultimately, you want to choose the route we want to put the DSP on. In this case, I'll choose the 007 route. And of course, days of the week, most of our routes are 7 days a week. That's what the box is defaulted to. If for some reason this happens to be only a 1 day a week route or maybe a 2 day a week route, you can certainly check or uncheck the boxes accordingly. Schedule B eligibility, that always defaults to yes. Again, we actually don't have the Schedule B anymore. That was a PCF item. Putting that on yes or no doesn't matter. It will not affect anything that happens. We usually just tell folks to leave it defaulted to the yes. And once you do that, at this point, we want to actually create and sign the documents. So we're going to click on that button. We'll see a little process wheel spin. Usually takes 5 seconds or so to get the docs created. You can see right here, we do have a little message come up: Schedule A done, contract done, W-9 form done. Now, if I actually scroll upward to my document grid, you can actually see there is some items here now. You can actually see there's a contract. Since I contracted myself on this route, you can see the route numbers listed for the contract in Schedule A. The document version is document version 1, meaning this is the first document I did. If I had to recreate these documents, again, if I hit the create button again, I would actually show document version number 2. You can see the manager signed that this is basically the date and time of when I actually created the documents. So this would actually be the electronic signature that would show up on the actual last page of the document. At this point, the DSP hasn't signed yet, so that's still blank. Now, I can click on a view button at any point here to open up the document in order to view it. Or also down in step 4, again, we do have a list of the documents that were created. Same thing, we have a link down here that you can actually view the documents this way. Now, we always recommend that the manager open up the documents to review them to make sure everything is okay. Again, they may want to open up the Schedule A to make sure the appropriate rates got pulled in into the system for that particular route, and just review the documents before they actually present them to the DSP. Now, provided that the DSP gave us an email address up top here, you can, in step 4, click on the Submit for DSP Review button. And what this will do is this will actually send an email out to whatever email address the DSP provided. You can see here a little message came up saying email was sent. And now if I go to my work computer, we should have, okay, there it just came in now. We have an email that was sent out. It's called DSP notification. If I actually open on that, there'll be a nice little email here with a link that says log in that the DSP would use to go to their sign-in page. Now, this is why we recommend from the standpoint of, from a legal standpoint, obviously getting the email address from the DSP, meaning that we're going to send them the link through the email. That kind of solidifies the fact that it was actually the DSP who signed this document, meaning we don't have access to their email. You know, we might know the email address, but we can't log in and open up any kind of links. So this actually helps from a legal standpoint to say, yeah, we definitely sent it to the email and they opened it up and they signed it themselves. Again, that's, you know, there are some people who don't want to provide email addresses, and I'll be showing you what to do if that's the case. Again, we have a process for that. It's not very hard, but some people just don't like to give out their email addresses. Okay, so once
hold on, that login will take them to the DSP portal?
That the DSP portal or the signature page. It's not what the portal is actually a separate link, Debbie. They have to go to the signature page first from this link to sign the documents. Once they're there, if they are brand new, that this is the criteria. If they're brand new, have never been in our system before, it will take them to the e-contract signing page first, and then they have the opportunity to sign up for the portal there. Okay. After they sign the documents, or that you could give them the external link, they can sign up that way. Okay. Now, if I was an existing DSP and I was taking a second route, and you want to send the documents to me, From this link here, this link would take me direct to the DSP portal because the DSP's already established something with us. So it depends on the situation of the carrier, whether they're brand new and whether or not they actually have. If they don't have a portal account, then it will always take them to the signature page. If they do have a portal, it's a matter of if they signed up or not yet.
Okay.
Okay, so in this case, obviously I haven't signed up yet, so it is going to take me to the signature page. So in this case, I am going to hit the login button. Okay, and from here, although it is kind of grayed out, there is a unique ID right here. You can see it's 7 followed by a bunch of zeros and 860. This is a unique number that's used actually for this signature page. Now, this number is separate from, if we go back to the manager's page, you can see right here, we actually have a payroll ID number. Now, this is specific for payroll purposes. This is not the number that's used for the DSP to actually sign the documents from the signature page. That is that separate number there. Now, this is a case where, like I said, one of the obvious questions we get at this point is, well, if they don't give me the email address, how am I going to get them that number? That's what I'm going to show you after we go through and sign these documents here. But again, from the email standpoint, this number is already filled in because they clicked on the link. Now they simply have to verify their information as far as their date of birth. We put in February 1st. I put in, I believe, last 4 digits of social is 0052. If I type in 0051 and try to click validate prospect, you can see it will fail. So obviously I have to make sure I get in the right social. And once I do that, now you actually see it says, hi, Jim Bakanowski. That's who I am. So, and you can see below that, I actually have 3 documents to actually sign. Now there's a link for each document here. And also there's a button that's grayed out right now that says sign document. If you click on that button right now, nothing will happen. It's not active. The reason for that is we want the carrier actually has to open up the document first before they actually can sign it. So for instance, a W-9, we have to click on that link. You can see the actual document did become active, the actual button did become active now. So again, basically the premise here is any person should open up a document and review it before they sign. So obviously we would open that up. Let's see, this is a W-9 form. Again, standard W-9 form, again, just because we had all the information already in the system, it's already filled out as far as name, address, social. And basically when we go to sign, the signature will actually appear right in that box right there. So now that I, quote, review the document, make sure all my information is correct. If I was a carrier, I would actually now be able to click on the sign document button. Now the document's actually signed. Now if I actually open up that link again right from the window here, we'll actually see my signature stamp actually will show up in that box in the middle. See right here, DSP Jim Bakanowski, location, time and date stamp. And again, so ultimately everybody would open up each document. Now the contract document itself, that's the document that actually has to be assigned in order for the DSP to automatically be assigned to the route. When you use the e-contract system, once they sign the contract document, that will automatically assign them to the route based on the start date you put in here. So in this case, I put in a start date of 9/1. Once I sign this document, it will automatically assign me to the route effective on today, 9/1. So we'll actually open that. Again, I'm not actually going to open the document. I'll just cancel out. But now if I click on the sign button, again, it usually takes about 5 seconds longer to actually get the route assignment done. And you see now it's actually signed. And if I actually went back into the administration page, we would see my name now assigned to that route effective 9/1. Now, once they go through and sign all the documents, as you can see if you scroll down the bottom, they have the opportunity at this point if they want to create an account with the DSP portal. And again, the basic login information is the same. They'll have to give us a user ID, security questions, password, email address we already have. They already supplied it from the contract page, so we just fill in the same thing here. They can certainly change it if they want, and they would click on the create account with PCF, and then they would actually be eligible to use any functionality in the DSP portal. If they decide they don't want to sign up right now, that's fine. They don't have to. In a future date, if they do change their mind, you can simply provide them with the link to get to the portal. There is on that home page for the portal, there's a button that says new to portal. So, click here, and there's a sign-in process. They'll be able to create an account with us at a future date. So again, some carriers sign up right now. Some say, well, I'll think about it and get back to you. It really, again, there's no right or wrong here. And sometimes there are managers who say, hey, we're running late. Let's get out the door. If you want to sign for the portal, we'll do that when you get back. So no right or wrong answer there, but certainly, again, they can sign up here if they wish at that time. All right, so I'm going to minimize the screen right now. And I'm actually going to go back to the manager's page. Now, this page doesn't automatically refresh. You can see right now I signed to these documents, but I don't see a signature yet. In order to actually refresh the page, I can actually click on the select link again. And you can see right now I did sign the contract. You can see the date I actually signed it, 9/1. It was created at 9/14, so that would be the manager's stamp. The DSP signed it on 9/1, which is, it's 10 minutes later. If I actually open this up by viewing it, oops, let me get that document. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you actually see we have two signature stamps. This is the one by the manager, again, based on the user ID. You can see I have the demo for CMG there as the person's name. Obviously, in real life, you would actually have regular user IDs, so you'd be able to identify which person created that document, time and date stamp and IP address of the computer they were at. And then, of course, from the DSP standpoint, we'll see the DSP's name, again, signature stamp and location, so forth and so on. So this document's actually officially signed and everything's all set to go. You can see here, obviously, that I did not sign the Schedule A, so you can see here that's still listed as no, not signed. So again, if ever you wanted to review with a DSP, did they get all the documents signed? Quick and easy way to do it right from here. There is another way that you'll be able to do it, which I'll show you momentarily. But again, once they get all the documents signed, the DSP is officially contracted and ready to go. Any questions on that basic process there before we jump into the next scenario? Okay. Now, so let's say, for example, the DSP did not have an email, or maybe they do have an email, but are paranoid and don't want to give it out. We do have that happen a lot. Folks just don't like to give their email out. They think we're going to send them all kinds of advertising, spam things, sign up for a paper, so forth and so on. Some people just don't like to give it out. So, question is, what happens then? You actually created the document, so from the manager's standpoint, that's all set to go. But how does the DSP actually sign them if they don't have a portal account? Well, what you'll need to do is actually you'll need two things. Number one, you'll need to provide them with that signature page link, which again, usually we send out to you. I'll send that out to you after the call here. And we recommend all the distributors that they save that as a favorite to their desktop just so they have it. And in order to get that number, let me go back to the right page here. In order to get this number here, this 7,860 number, in order to get that number, what you need to do is actually go to the document search page of eContracting. So go to eContracting, we're going to go to the document search page. We have very basic filters up top. Again, you would list the plant. You can search by the day you created the document, meaning uploaded date, or the actual contract start date. In this case, I'll do the contract start date. I know I created the document today, so my date from and date to will be 9/1. You can certainly search for a range. That's very useful if you're starting out and contracting all the carriers in your plan at once. You'll be able to actually monitor who signed documents and who hasn't. And again, that's the next step here is, do you want to view the documents that are just signed, the ones that are not signed, or both? Normally, I like seeing lots of data. I always go with both. And then, of course, you can choose, do you want to see all the documents or just specific ones? In this case, we'll select all. So if I click on the search criteria, raise this up here a little bit. And you can see here, I have the list of 3 documents. We have the W-9 contract and Schedule A. We actually have when they were created, 9/1, the start date of 9/1. You can see whether or not they were signed in this column. As we noted, we have 2 documents that were signed. The Schedule A was not signed. And again, this is an easy way to make sure all your DSPs are, I'll say, compliant, to make sure they signed all the documents they were supposed to. You just simply have to look and see if everything was signed. And on the first 2 columns here, this is where you can actually see we have our payroll ID number, but this is where we also have what's called the prospect ID number, which is that unique number they need for the signature page. You see that 7,000 or 70,000 followed by 860, and that's exactly the number that is listed up top here, 70,860. So if they don't provide the email address, it's a simple matter of once you create the documents, you just simply have to do a quick search on this page here, and you'll be able to pull up that person's prospect ID number. And then we'll minimize a couple things here. Then, as I mentioned, we would actually give you the link for the signature page. You would just simply click on it. Actually, I'm already logged in here. Let me get this link here. So again, it would start out where you would actually type in the link. Once they have the the prospect ID number. They click on next. They'll next be prompted in step 2 to enter their date of birth and last 4 digits social, and then everything else works the same as what I just demonstrated. Okay. All right. Any questions on what to do if a prospect signing up does not give you the email address? And as I mentioned, there's no right or wrong. Again, a DSP can do it both ways. Again, we usually try to recommend capturing the email address, also that, again, because we also recommend they sign up for the portal so that they can actually look and see and do a lot of things in the portal as far as getting their reports, checking a few other things, getting, viewing their documents, so forth and so on. And also, as I mentioned, once they sign up for the portal, if they go to take another route, that link will actually take them right to the DSP portal page rather than that signature page. If the DSP has not ever signed up for the portal, again, that link that is emailed will actually just take them right to the signature page. The system will determine which one it needs to be based on the data in the system. Okay, that's pretty much how the actually contracting process works. Now, we do have a couple different, I'll say, forms available. Now, this is part of the contracting setup process. I'm going to go back to the manager's page here. Again, we'll just do that search real quick and do a select. Now, this particular plan, you can see we just have the documents we have available: contract Schedule A, W-9. We have a bond form, and we have a couple accident insurance forms, one specific to the Massachusetts area, which is from the PCF area. We also have an opt-in, opt-out form, which is we have a form from the Wilson Gregory Company, which I'm sure you guys probably are familiar with. Most newspapers are. That's kind of the go-to company for offering optional accident insurance or bonding for the carriers. So we do have their standard forms here, but we do have some other categories. Again, from the PCF standpoint, we actually have other documents that we use. We also have some addendums to our contracts based on certain criteria. We also have a property damage form in some cases. We also put in categories for what we call photo ID, tax ID, and other. These are categories that don't normally produce documents, but if somebody actually wanted to upload a document, for instance, PCF has a business practice of we always collect a photo ID for the carrier. This way, we're making sure we're contracting the person who's signing the documents. We have a photo ID. Normally it's driver's license is the most common. Where once we'll make a copy of that and upload it into the system so that, again, if any kind of legal thing happens, we can say, well, this is the person we contracted. Here's their ID. It matches the contract. Again, it covers us from a legal standpoint. So again, one of the things you need to go over as far as when you have your discovery call with the e-contract setup is we need to determine what documents each distributor is going to use, as far as the actual documents themselves, if they're actually going to use our document storage process for uploading other documents. If so, again, we have the standard categories here. So that is customizable based on the distributor as far as what they want. So again, that's just an example of what we do have from the PCF standpoint. And there are, I think, one or two other ones that certain distributors have that PCF doesn't use, but some distributors decided, hey, we do need this category, so we added on a plan by plan or distributor by distributor basis. Okay, now if ever you did want to upload a document, that process is actually done through the e-contracting admin page. Now the admin page starts out the same way. We have basically where we have to search in step 1 and select in step 2. So again, if I actually search for my name, excuse me, I would select, and again, I do have my grid here. Now in step 3, it's slightly different. I actually ask you what document type, what category you actually want to upload a document, or excuse me, document to. Now we do not allow a document to be uploaded to the contract category. Again, the reason for that is the contract category from a system standpoint is what triggers a route assignment. So we always want to have somebody actually sign the document electronically so that automatically assigns them to the route. Again, there are times where distributors say, hey, what happens if I have to handwrite something on the contract and initial it? How do I get that uploaded? That's where we usually recommend that as far as the categories. That's where we recommend that they have the other category listed. So this way, if they do have a case like that where they have some sort of contract where they just have to handwrite something in due to a small change, they can upload it and it is actually part of the system here. So in this case, let's say I was going to upload a bond form. The category. Now the date of birth and social security number, you can see is already dashes there. That's because I already created the documents. Our system already has that information. So it is actually already in there. It's just hidden by the asterisk. The DSP email, again, same thing. We have that. You can actually put in a route number if you want, or you can leave the field blank. Again, it depends on your preference. Bond form may be route specific, or in this case, in my mind, the bond form is a DSP specific item. So I would actually leave that blank. And then you would actually select the file that you want to upload. Now, the file itself has to be in a PDF format. The system won't accept JPEGs or PNG extensions. I think there's a couple other ones. In most cases, what happens is when you scan a document, whether you're using a printer, scanner, fax machine, what have you, usually there's a process that it will actually, you can send that document somewhere and it automatically converts to PDF, or there are programs online. I know Google Chrome, if you actually open up a picture document in Google Chrome, it does give you the option to save it as a PDF. So again, that's the big criteria. It does have to be a PDF file. And simply you would browse for the file. I do have a test file on my desktop somewhere. It's not a exciting test file. So I have a test PDF. And then I would simply click on the upload button. Now you see the screen blink there. Hopefully you caught that. See now in the bond form, I actually do have something here listed where it says manager DSP signed. Again, not really a signed, it's just more or less an upload. And if I actually view that document, again, it won't be very exciting. It's just a picture of a Google search engine. It just says Google there. So again, so if the distributors do decide they want to do the uploads, they can, as long as it's in the PDF format. And ultimately, again, usually the photo, tax ID, and other categories are fine. There are some cases where maybe a person changes the Social Security number. They may want to manually upload a new W-9 form. That's fine. Again, something with a bond form. Maybe they decided they didn't want the accident insurance at first, but changed their mind, and you hand signed a document. You might want to upload that to the category. Okay. Any questions on actually how to upload a document? Excellent. Okay, that's pretty much the contracting process. Now, we also have a feature for contract renewals. We go back to the manager's page. Again, depending on how the distributor is set up, in some cases, some contracts have no end date. They're valid until either party decides to end them. In other cases, some distributors do either a yearly, bi-yearly, some cases 6 months, they do a renewal period. Now, if ever they do want to do a renewal, we do have functionality here. We do have a rated button that actually says contract renewal. I would search for my name here. And I would select myself as I normally would. Now, most of the steps are going to be exactly the same as if I was doing a contracting process. Again, I would select the plant. Now, again, since this is a renewal, we already have the date of birth listed. The start date, again, or renewal date, we would list in there accordingly. We do make the person, the manager, type in the Social Security number again. There was a business reason and legal reason we actually did that. So in this case, it would be 0052. Again, you can certainly enter an email address if you wanted to. Now, since this is a renewal, we're going to have a column here that says existing route. Since I'm only assigned to one route, the only route I'm going to be able to get renewed on is the route I'm assigned to. I'm actually not going to be able to renew myself on a route I'm not currently assigned to. That goes against the definition of renewal. So by doing renewal, a lot of the data is already filled in here. Certainly if I was assigned to more than one route, the existing route would have maybe one or two routes listed as far as what I was doing renewal for. All the other steps are exactly the same. I would create and sign the documents. Again, I could submit for DSP review if I want to send an email, and then the DSP, of course, would log on and sign the renewal documents. Now, if you are doing a contract renewal as part of the renewal, there may be a time where you're negotiating with the carrier, and maybe there is a rate increase, or again, maybe you're doing a restructure, and there's a rate decrease on somebody's route. Again, what's recommended is that you actually get that rate information into the system first, because this way, when you go to renew the document, the Schedule A will actually show those updated rates. Now, the contract system is smart enough to know that, let's say your rate change is going into effect on 9/4. If you put in the start date of 9/1, the system will display on the Schedule A the rates effective on 9/1. If you have some future rate changes, again, which sometimes happens with renewals, you need to make sure your start date in the contract actually matches what the, for the renewal, make sure it matches when the new rates are going into effect. So again, in our scenario, If I knew rates going into effect on 9/4, I would have actually future dated this renewal for 9/4. Thus, the new rates would have shown up. So when the carrier signed it, they see all the new information. They know what the new rate changes are, whether it's more or less, and they sign the document. Everyone has exactly what they need. Okay, any questions on renewals?
Does this let you know when you have a renewal due?
Yes, again, it depends. We have a search feature here. We're probably not going to see a lot of that in here. But again, we do have an option that says due to renew under e-contracting. Again, very basic search criteria. You would select your plan, and you would put in this date here based on the renewal date. Now, it always defaults to the current day's date. So if I left this date in here and did a search, this would tell me anybody whose documents have been signed over a year ago. Now, obviously, if I do a search now, we may or may not, we do come up with some stuff. You can see we have some test folks. You see in this case, we actually have the when the DSP started in payroll, what they're currently assigned to the route, and we have a contract sign date. So let me change this to the year 2019. We'll probably get more. So we actually changed it to 2019. You can see this is a document I just signed right here. It actually says that I started on 1/9, my route valid. That's when I actually started on the route. And the current signed contract I have is 9/1/2017. Excuse me, losing my voice here. So depending on what search criteria you have, for instance, if I put in 9/1/2018, you can see I actually am not there because my year hasn't passed. If I put in 9/2/2018, you see mine comes up. So depending on what date you have in here, basically it's the date minus 365 days. So again, if I wanted to see, for example, Mark, to your question, I'm the manager and I want to say, hey, what contracts do I have upcoming for renewal in September? What I would do is I would actually put in a date of 10/1/2017, click on search, and this would give me a list of people. Obviously, again, we have some test data in here. This would give me a list of people who contracts are due to expire somewhere between 9/1 and 10/1. And it would actually show when they started. It would show actually, it would list the actual date of when they signed the last document. So this way, again, you saw in that case, I signed my document on 9/1. If we did this search next year, you would know that, okay, I should do this renewal before September 1st.
Right.
So yeah, so it depends on what the date is here. Again, it is set for a year. That is kind of a standard in the industry. So we did set it for a year.
Okay. And that's basically what I was looking for, because I could see most of them saying, okay, September 1st, let me see who I've got due this month so that you can get them recontracted before their contract runs out.
Yep, and the most common mistake we have on this, Mark, is, again, it defaults to today's date. So if I search for today's date, it's going to give me everybody who's, quote, past due. It's not going to tell me in advance, so that's where you have to change that date to say, okay, let me go a month in advance and see who I have to contract this upcoming month, and, you basically work from there. You just have to hope. You just have to hope if you put in 10/1, you just have to hope that someone didn't sign the document on 9/1, or you're going to say, oops, I should have done that today. And again, that does happen, but, if you're off by a day in the grand scheme of things, it might not matter, but to be officially legal and to renew someone, you should, what we usually recommend to folks is they should probably check this weekly is what we recommend. And when they do it weekly, do it for a month in advance. This way you got plenty of warning of who's coming up and can plan accordingly.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, not a problem. Okay, so that's basically the 4 tabs there. The upload's mostly used for uploading documents, manager's page to create. The document search, again, as I mentioned, you can actually use that to, let's go back to that page real quick. You can actually do a date range. For instance, if I go back for the last 2 years, I don't think we have a lot of data in here. And let's say I put in both based on contract start date. You can see here I'll have a whole list of people. Now, again, assuming this was me launching a distributorship, launching the system for the first time, and I was trying to get everyone contracted electronically, this is a good way to monitor exactly what documents were created and whether or not the DSP signed them. You can actually see, we have people with yeses and nos. Obviously, anyone who has a no, that probably means you need to circle back to that carrier and get that document signed. Now, again, it may be a case where, for instance, we have Randy Johnson here, didn't sign this document on the 5 route. Well, maybe that was a mistake. Maybe the carrier changed their mind and switched routes. Maybe the manager actually went to create it and put in the wrong route number. Again, all the data is here, and of course, it does list when the document was actually created. And I don't think I have any examples here. if I had future dated something, for instance, if I had future dated the one I just did, it would have said created date 9/1. It would have said start date of 9/4. You would see that there. So again, that's a good way, especially if you're doing contract renewals or if you have a rate change and you want to make sure you put in your rates in the DSP comp system and you want to recreate the documents. If your rates are effective 9/4, whatever documents you're renewing, you want to make sure this is an easy way to check everybody. You say, okay, do I have all the start dates of 9/4 so the correct rates show up on the Schedule A? So again, so this is very handy. And again, you can, just look at one document if you want. I just want to pull up the contract. We do have the link here. So if you do want to actually open up the link to view the document you created, whether it's signed or not, you'll actually be able to do that. So this page comes in handy again for a lot of like tracking, analysis, what have you. And again, the main thing though is we do have the prospect ID number there. So distributors will be going to this page more frequently than they think, just because again, not all the carriers will give them an email address. Some people don't. So that's where they have to go for that. Okay, that's pretty much it for the contract system. Before we get into the discussion of what you need to do when you talk to someone about documents, any questions on anything?
No, don't think so.
Okay, now I did have this kind of in the agenda here. When we have our what we call a discovery call, normally we have a basic 5-minute question as far as payroll setup, which that's what we went over on Monday. What is your payroll period? When does it start? Are you going to be charging for complaints? Do you have tips? All those questions we get answered as far as setting up the system. The e-contracting, usually we do ask a general question at that point as far as saying, what documents are you going to want to have signed electronically? Now, the most obvious answer is most people are going to have a contract and some sort of rate addendum, which we call the Schedule A. But you do have to ask the question as far as, are there any other documents? Now, again, most people don't tend to think about the W-9 being electronic. They just think, yeah, I just get them to sign that paper and that's it. So we do ask, will you have an electronic W-9? We actually ask them, is there some sort of bond or optional bond or accident insurance that you offer that, again, that document may need to be electronic. You saw in PCF's case, we also have a property damage form that's sometimes used. We have certain addendums that, again, if the DSP is under the right criteria, one of those addendums may actually come into play. They're longevity addendums, basically. So we need to find out from the distributor what documents they have and what they actually want available as far as being electronic. Now, the ideal thing would be that if it's a document that is signed by either party, whether it's the manager and the carrier or just the carrier, ideally we want that to be into our system so that when they go to create it, the system creates all the documents at once, puts on all the appropriate signature, pulls in all the appropriate carrier information, name, address, social, date of birth, whatever's needed, and this way it's all done for them to save them all that extra hand, old style pen and paper work. So it is something, one of the first questions we ask is, what documents do you have? Now, once we determine what documents they have, we do need to usually get examples of those documents because we usually have to review them for, we'll dismiss that, for determining what field values we can pull in automatically from the system and what field values we may need through what we call hard code. You normally use the term static or variable field. A static field is something that always happens. It never changes for the plan. It might be, let's say, a no-notice fee. The standard no-notice fee for every route in the plant may be $200. That may be listed on one of the documents. If it's always $200, we just, it's a static field. We just type it right in and it never changes. But something like rates, that's a variable field. We pull the rates in from a table and it automatically populates. There are some other items, again, like carrier name, date, that we can pull in automatically. It's a variable field based on which person they select in the e-contract. So I'm going to open up a basic sample contract that we have online. Some of our distributors have used this. Just to give you an idea of what we do when we go through the documents here. Now, you see this document here basically has your company name. Ultimately, obviously, the distributor would be providing us with that information already filled in. But you can see, like, for instance, on the top part here, it says agreement dated, and there's a blank, between your company, whatever the distributor is, and blank, meaning the person. Now, based on the e-contract page, we know when the start date is, or the creation date. In some cases, some contracts have both, meaning the contract was created on this date and goes into effect on another date in the future. Again, we can pull that data into the system. The carrier's name, again, we know that from the e-contract system. So these are what's considered variable fields where we're going to pull that data in from a table. So that's something we just have to determine from the distributor. Okay, in this case, it says agreement dated. The question I would have to them, do you want the date of when you created the documents or the actual start date of when the carrier goes on the route? In this particular case, since there's only one date listed, chances are the distributor would say it should be the start date because that's when the contract goes into effect. Day one is when they start the route. Carrier name, again, we would pull that in from the system. That's usually an obvious question, but we do ask it. And then basically we kind of go down the form and see if there's any other spots that might have a item here. For instance, here's the contract and obligations. There's a blank right here. It just says the expected delivery time is stipulated on Schedule A, which may be changed from time to time with X amount of days notice. Now, this is a case here where we would ask the distributor, is this a standard, again, kind of like the no notice fee, or maybe it's a what we call a 30-day notice. If you want to change rates on a carrier, somewhere in the contract it may stipulate you have to give them a certain amount of notice before you do that. So if it's the same everywhere in the plant, it's just basically a static field. Again, it might be a 30-day notice. We would type in the number 30 there, which we would underline it. There we go. So it would be number 30. So again, basically, we would go through the document and analyze it. Again, here's another case where, again, if they want to change it, the notice. I think if we go down a little bit further, this is the actual termination. If the carrier wants to leave, we expect them to give us a certain amount of notice on this contract. Although it's not underlined, if the carrier wants to mail a notice to the carrier, we do, in this particular contract, we will put in the address of where the distributor wants to receive mail. Now, some of them want to receive mail at the actual warehouse location. Others have, they might run the business out of their house, or maybe they have a suite or office. Again, we would put that address in there. But again, you kind of get the idea. Basically, we have to go through the document and figure out what exactly is a static field, what might be a variable field, and find out, does that number change at all? Again, the contract documents are usually pretty simple. In most cases, the documents themselves are simply name, address, or excuse me, it might be name, address, start date. Again, most of these other fields tend to be static fields because it applies to everybody. It's always a 30-day notice if someone wants to change something. Again, here's a case where it says this agreement will remain in full force for a period of 1 year from the date of execution. This would be a case of, well, if it's a 1-year contract, this would mean that the distributor is going to be doing contract renewals every year. Maybe they do them every 2 years. Again, that number we type in, but that number, that's a hard-coded number because it would stay the same for everybody. And again, ultimately at the bottom here, again, in this case, we have what we consider an old contract where we would sign it by hand. This we would be replacing with signature boxes, as you saw on the other document. So this is the conversation ultimately has to happen, Mark and Debbie, where when we find out what documents there are, we do need to review them. Now, a W-9 form is a standard government form. That's not something anyone can change, or obviously the IRS gets very annoyed with us. So we actually have that form already formatted. We actually have that in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. So if the distributor wants to use the W-9 form, there's really no conversation there. It's a standard form. They really, by law, can't change it if they're going to use it for, submitting something to IRS or legal purposes. So we have that form. There's nothing to do. Very rarely do we not have to review a contract and Schedule A rate change with somebody. Other forms, again, we have as I mentioned, we have a accident insurance and bond form that we use from the PCF standpoint that is acceptable by Wilson Gregory Company. So if a distributor does have those options available for a carrier, if they are using Wilson Gregory, what we do is we say, well, here's the form we use. Is this the same form you use? Perhaps because it's a different part of the country, they may use a different form for Wilson Gregory somewhere else than we do up here in the upper northeast corner. So if it's the same form, again, we have that document, and we can just say, well, we already have this. We can just use this one, and we already have an electronic format. There's no more discussion. If it's a separate company, we'll need to get that form from that separate company, and then we'll need to do a review to find out exactly what's needed. Now, the Wilson Gregory Company, trying to think here if I have a form. I think we may have a form handy here. I just need to find out where. I think this person has one. These are my test DSPs in the production system for PCF. So as soon as we get this loaded up, this person probably has about 8,000 contracts from testing here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong page. Excuse me. I need to go to the manager's page. That's why it's not looking quickly. And search for the asterisk people, as I call them. And this item right here. There we go. Now you see this person I've used for many test scenarios for various things we've done over the years. But if we actually go down to the accident insurance form, if I click on view, and we'll open this up. Now this form hasn't been signed or filled, basically signed officially yet, but you can see based on the fact this is a standard form we use for Wilson Gregory, it actually will list the company name. That's something we would change that according to the distributor. But all the name, address, phone number, social, date of birth, that's all information that's on the e-contract page. We pull that in automatically. When the DSP goes to sign, there is a secondary window that pops up when they go to sign, where they actually have to fill in the beneficiary first, last name, relationship, and check, they have a checkbox here whether or not they have other insurance in force. And then obviously you see the start date. Again, a lot of this stuff we pull in automatically, but this would be a case we would show them the form and say, is this the form that you use? And if the answer is yes, then okay, great. We have that same form. There's nothing to review. They have a different form. Again, we have to go through what it is, but again, I imagine most of those forms for accident insurance would have, basically all the data up here as far as name, address, social, date of birth. We probably need to bring those data elements into the form, and that would mean that form would have variable fields where we'd have to import that data. So, and it's really just a matter of going through the documents like that in order to determine what's needed. Now, I will open up a Schedule A from our test environment here. Let's do a quick search for the Schedule A. I'll open up the Schedule A that I just created. Actually, I'll do Mary Smith because I think she has rates on her route. Now, one of the things that we find is when we get a Schedule A or rate addendum from one of the distributors, normally they've been doing it by hand. They actually have categories kind of within the body of the schedule itself that actually they might have, if they have 15 products in their plant, they'll actually have to handwrite each product in and say, here's the rate for it. What happens is when we go to convert them to a Schedule A, a lot of that they can actually, in a sense, we can streamline their Schedule A, in the sense that our system will automatically, oops, actually, she didn't produce any documents here. Hold on. Let me find one with some rate appendices. I think I showed you an example of these Schedule A rate appendices before. Yeah, here we go. So again, you can see we do pull in obviously on the Schedule A, we pull in name, address, date, so forth and so on. This is a PCF one. We actually have the guaranteed delivery times based on that plant's criteria. We do have some hard-coded items. But a lot of times when we talk to a distributor, they'll have a similar section that'll actually say product and rate charges. Now, what happens from the PCF schedule, we actually pull that in an appendix as far as we have complaint charges. We also have what a copy rate pay might be on the route, again, based on product, rate by day of the week. If there's any kind of the scales involved, again, this is, as you saw, we had scales where we had the Z1 Wall Street Journal for 50 cents. We also had a Z2 Wall Street Journal with a scale of 1. And then at the bottom here, here's our scaled rate. So basically what happens is when we go to review the rate schedule, a lot of stuff on their Schedule A can be streamlined because we actually pull the data in automatically. So the body of their Schedule A may shrink a little bit, and instead of having a list of 15 products, they may just have to have a line item for product and rates refer to Schedule B or refer to Schedule B through E. It's something along those lines. So the rate schedule tends to be a little bit more of a give and take. Again, in a sense, we do end up having to streamline a lot of the data because we pull it in automatically to save someone the trouble of actually handwriting it in. But with that being said, obviously we do have to, talk to the distributor and say, here's what will happen when you use our system. We just won't change the document for them. We have to say, okay, here's what we recommend. You can either delete that line item entirely about the rates and just, have it in the appendix, or you could change, as I mentioned, you could change that list of 15 products, just say refer to Schedule B, C, D, and E as needed. So again, there is some communication, and ultimately we need to get back, based on that communication, we'll need to get back a final form of this rate schedule from them. Again, usually PCF doesn't actually change the body of the contract, we need to get that contract or addendum. We need to get that back from the distributor. We just don't type in changes on the screen and put them in. We usually like to have input and actually get the document from the distributor to say, hey, this is what they want. We didn't actually just type something in ourselves and, you know, slip a clause in that the distributor might not want. So this is actually when we actually get the final document from the distributor. We do need it, depending on the complexity of the document, we may need a couple days to actually get it converted to electronic format. Again, depends on how many variable and fields are in there, how many static fields. We also try to set the documents up so that if they printed out a blank one, again, they could actually just maybe fill in data if they did have to do something on an ad hoc basis. And also, you know, we try to set it up so that it would be an electronic format. I don't know if you guys, I get very frustrated sometimes when I do my taxes. I have to get a special form from the IRS, and it says, okay, you can type in this form, but then when I go to save it with my data in there, it says, oh, you can't save the file. You know, and you actually have to print it out and scan it. And it's like, well, if I type that in, I want to be able to save it. And again, we try to set the forms up like that just in case somebody has to use them outside of the e-contract system for some separate instance, and then maybe upload the data. So this way they have the PDF form that they could do that with. So that process usually does take a couple days. And again, it does depend on the complexity of what needs to be done on the form and obviously how many variable fields. And there's also a test period that we have to go through. Now, once we get our initial documents set up, we'll put them in our test QA environment. And ideally, at that point, we'll be working on the documents. At that point, we'll talk to the distributor and hopefully get the rate information from them. So at that point, we'll start popping in at least some basic rate information that they have so that when we run a test in QA, they'll actually see their documents and they'll actually see the data pull in from the rate schedule, so they'll get a final look of what the document actually looks like. And we'll make sure we send that off to them for final approval. Obviously, if there's any edits or changes, they'll let us know. We'll make those changes. And then ultimately, once we get a sign-off in the QA test environment, we'll move those documents into production and make sure, obviously, you know, at that point, we have to make sure they get the rates, copy rates and everything loaded for their compensation. Any questions on that? That's kind of a lot of stuff there, but that's pretty much the process we use.
I don't think I've got any.
Okay. And like I said, this section here is usually what I'll say is the most time consuming. Again, just making sure we review the documents, finding out those answers, and then getting the documents set up and then having them reviewed. Again, it's just, and also in a lot of cases, when we go to streamline that rate schedule, sometimes when we do that, again, since we need the distributor to make the changes, sometimes it might take them a day or two or three to get us back a new revised document before we can actually work on getting it confirmed. So sometimes whenever we go to launch someone, if they want to use e-contracting, we recommend there's at least a 2-week window, if not 3 weeks, ideally, to make sure we have time to discuss everything with them, get the documents converted, get them tested, and have them review them again in our QA system. So highly recommend at least 2 to 3 week minimum lead time as far as if they're going to use e-contracting.
Okay. Now, when we roll this out, like I said, what we probably do is we do 1 or 2 pilots programs.
Okay.
What would be the maximum number of distributors that you would want to work on at one time? I think we've got 9 here in Atlanta and 5 in Dayton and, 2 or 3 in Austin. I mean, obviously you don't want, 10 of them hitting you at one time, I would imagine.
Right. I don't think we have a set number in place, but obviously to your point, we would want to limit it so that the main thing would actually be marked again, assuming it's 10 distributors, we're going to assume they all have 10 different versions of the document. That's probably
a pretty good assumption.
Right. Now, there are some cases where, again, it might be like all the people in Atlanta, for whatever reason, maybe there was a standard document that they all had used for some reason because, maybe they all came from the same company or maybe they all went online and got it from the same place. Again, that's kind of a tough answer to give, but to your point, you're right. We wouldn't want to do all 10 at once because we have to meet with all 10 of them. And again, if we were in that 2 to 3 week time period, trying to get 10 of them done in that 2 to 3 time period probably wouldn't be good. I would probably say 2 to 3 at a time would be certainly doable. Possibly it could be higher, or Paul Zanata may come back to me and actually say, Jim, we want to limit it to 2. I'll actually ask that question. I have a call right after this one that I get to listen in on the development team call with Paul's team. I will bring that up with him to see if he has a preference. But my guess would be 2 to 4 would be probably a good safe bet as far as that goes, Mark.
Okay.
Yep.
And I was just kind of trying to get you know, a guideline type of thing.
Yep. And that's to say, like you said, we could probably do 2 to 4. And again, let's assume we do it on a 2-week basis, we would do 2 to 4 1 week. And while we're getting those documents together, again, we could actually be possibly starting the discovery meetings with the next 2 to 4.
Right.
You know, so again, so we can kind of roll it out like that. But like I said, I would want to yield to Paul. Just he may be concerned from, and a lot of it deals with, like you said, how detailed the contracts are. That's the tricky part. We don't know that in advance. So that's why Paul may want to put a cap on maybe 2 or 3 every 2 weeks or something like that. So
okay.
Okay, what else? Any other questions for the contracting?
Is there any help documentation? I know there was a documentation on the stuff you covered earlier this week, but is there anything on the e-contract?
I believe that is, I want to say, a work in progress. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have, someone is actually working on that. So right now, if you went online, you know how we have our help section, we have our DSP comp guide, route planning. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's one specifically for e-contracting yet, but that should be coming very shortly.
Okay.
I don't know the status of where it stands, so I can't give you an exact date, but I know most of the initial, I'll say, grunt work is done. Obviously, we have screen images, so forth and so on. You know, as far as in processes go, I just don't know if it's all been put together and wrapped up in a nice, neat bow to make it nice and presentable. I just don't know where the status is on that. But that is something that we will have. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. What other questions? Any?
I don't think I've got anything else.
All right, then, if that's the case, we have to go to the PCF folks. Vic, Christo, David, or Jason. I'm not sure who's on the call. All I heard Vic. Do you guys have anything for Mark and Deborah?
Oh, nothing from my end.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Christo.
No, I was just saying nothing from my end.
All right. This is our last scheduled call. Risto, I don't know if you want to wrap up everything here. That's also Jim's way of saying he needs to take a sip of water. We'd like someone else to talk for 15 seconds anyway.
Well, first off, thank you, Jim, for everything. I appreciate the time and you know, everything that you covered with the team. Mark, you did mention some next steps and how many. I know Jim is going to have that conversation with Paul. I would like, though, if you could work through Victor Alomar on a lot of